Welcome everyone to our podcast. This is a conversation between Danna Bethlehem, Director of Product Marketing for Thales Identity Products, and me, Martin Kuppinger. I'm Principal Analyst at KuppingerCole. And we'd like to discuss and exchange our perspectives on the interplay between Zero Trust on one hand, a very popular buzzword these days, and identity and access management on the other side. Welcome, Danna.
Thank you so much, Martin. Glad to be here.
So let's directly get started. So when we look at Zero Trust, this has been as a term around for a long, long time. And it looks like it becomes increasingly popular these days and more relevant to businesses. So what has changed from your perspective?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Martin. I was just doing some research into Zero Trust recently because I had to discuss it internally with some salespeople. They were getting questions about Zero Trust. And I was very surprised to see that Zero Trust has been around for 10 years. So 10-year anniversary for Zero Trust. But I think that we're at a real milestone at this very point in time where the stars are aligned to give a new life on Zero Trust. And it's an exciting period, especially for identity and access management and Zero Trust.
Yeah. And why is it? So I would say it's partially because when Zero Trust started, it was Zero Trust Network. So it was a concept which was very network-centric.
Exactly.
And right now we're talking about Zero Trust as a far broader concept, which is mainly about identity, which is about a lot of other things. And I believe that is probably one of the main drivers. The other main driver from my perspective is simply we have a challenge. We have different deployment models. We have ever-increasing attacks. So would you share that perspective that these are the reasons why it is?
Yeah, again. I think that when Zero Trust was first when it was first presented way back when, it was mainly conceived as a way for increasing security and heavily adopted by network security providers. But at that point in time, the level of cloud expansion and the level of cloud adoption was nowhere near where it is today. And so although we began talking way back when about the disintegration of the traditional security parameter within organizations, today, and especially as a result of COVID-19, we can really see it breaking up before our eyes, right? The mass move of employees to home means that organizations are provisioning massive cloud solutions to their customers, to their users, in order to enable them to work from home. And what we've seen is that many of the traditional network security solutions that enabled remote working for maybe a part of employees, either through the VPN or through other gateway type solutions, are no longer meeting the needs when everybody is working from home.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point beyond what I mentioned, that the reality today is that we have devices which are personal devices where people use them because it was the only option to work from home sometimes. And we have this massive adoption of cloud, specifically in the past few months. It was in the crisis, but even before, I think cloud adoption, when looking at the uptake of cloud first strategies in organizations, that all leads to a higher adoption of Zero Trust. And I think the model behind it also looks, or is from my perspective, something which is valid. There are a number of good things in that. So there's a logic in more and more organizations adopting Zero Trust. So when we look at this, what does Zero Trust really mean in the world of identity management?
So I think that for all organizations, Zero Trust means that you really need to that you can't really trust anybody or any entity that is accessing any application or any network route within an enterprise. So it's trust no one, verify everywhere. And because organizations no longer have that kind of security gateway at the point of entry to their networks, then that precept, that tenet of having to verify everyone, everywhere, is very, very suited to today's reality, where, as you just mentioned, users are accessing applications from everywhere, mainly from home at this very specific point in time, but from everywhere in general, from multiple devices. And not only that, is that applications are also being delivered from everywhere. So you have the way that I see it in my mind is a kind of a constellation. When you look up to the sky at night, you see, millions and millions of stars, and that's the way I kind of see this. See the enterprise environment today. You have hundreds of applications being delivered from many, many places. You have users everywhere. And the need to secure those users, the most natural way to secure those users and to secure all your data and all your applications is by making sure that they're protected when they log into applications at that very access point. So in my mind, in that respect, the access point, the application access point has really become the front line of security.
Yeah, that aligns very well with how I tend to describe it. Because when we look at what happens is we have a user accessing a device, going through whichever type of network to either a cloud service or a server, so a system, where an application runs. And then information, data is accessed. So where do we can get a grip on that? The device might be owned by the user, so we are limited in that. We don't know which network. It can be every network, and the service can reside everywhere. So frequently, it's the SaaS service. We don't have to grip on the server itself. So it's the application at that end, and it's the user at that end, and at the other end, behind the application, it's the data. And then it's about authenticating, and it's about access controls at the application level, at the information level. These are the things we really can enforce security and where we can implement our zero trust model. And that means at the end, identity is management exactly comes in where we have the touch points for future security.
Absolutely. And the beauty of this solution is that it's actually, when you think about it, it's network agnostic, because it implements security for identities and protects applications without having to really understand how a user is getting into that application, which underlying network is being used. And another really good thing is that these solutions, cloud-based access management solutions, are really quite mature today. So these are solutions that can be implemented today to meet today's needs. Whereas on the network security side, I think that there's a kind of that area is still evolving. Although, of course, the best policy is always to have a multi-layered approach. So I'm not saying that organizations shouldn't be protecting their networks and their traffic routes. They should be, but these solutions should definitely be working together to provide a much more comprehensive solution, security solution for a much broader footprint today within the enterprise.
Yeah, and I think the point is also there's not a single only way to implement zero trust. There are different ways, which also depend on the risks, on the risk appetite of organizations, on what they have in infrastructure, how things are working. But clearly, the things where it's easy, the areas where it's easy is where identification, authentication, and where access happen, because this is what we always have. The other things like network might vary massively. So we might have so many different types of access, so many different types of devices, so that it's hard to do it consistent. The one thing I'd like to add is clearly when we look at implementation, or two things maybe to add. The one is there's not a single tool for zero trust security.
Exactly.
So zero trust security is a concept, a paradigm. It's not a tool. So if someone sells this is the one and only solution for zero trust, it's probably going a little over the top. But if someone sells this helps you in going towards the zero trust concept, that might make a lot of sense. The other thing is be careful with layered security. You need layered security, but be careful not to have too many layers and too many elements of that, because that causes other issues here. So that would be a little bit of my perspective on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ultimately, all the solutions have to. Sorry, I'm interrupting you. Ultimately, all the solutions have to fit together and work together. Totally agree there. But just coming back to your earlier question about, why is this kind of maybe exaggerating a golden age for zero trust? But I think also that we're at a point in time where many organizations, and we're hearing it a lot from our customers as well, are looking to see how they can revamp and modernize and replace legacy systems. And I think there's probably a void in, what are the next steps? What kind of guidance can CISOs and risk managers take and implement in order to take this next step into the future, in order to make their organizations ready and secure for the future where we're going to be much more cloud-centric. And that's why Zero Trust is kind of a security scheme for the moment, because it does give very good and practical guidelines as to how organizations can move in a phased approach from what they have today and where they want to be tomorrow in terms of securing these kind of dispersed cloud-centric environments.
Yeah, it's a sort of if A, then B. If you say A, cloud first, then the logical B is security must follow concepts around zero trust. There are variants around it, but at the end, it's a very logical consequence of cloud first strategies that you need new modern security concepts. So coming close to an end, what would be your most important advice when it comes to zero trust and identity management in that context?
Yeah. So first of all, I think that because of we see that organizations are really having to adopt cloud applications really to enable their needs of the moment. That's a good place to start. Really trying to map out which cloud applications you've got and implementing access controls at the access point for your cloud applications. Good also to take into account how any kind of access controls do indeed meet zero trust. What we didn't mention actually is the need for continuous validation, continuous identity validation, the need to really assess that a user who's accessing an application is validated and authorized to do so each time they hop from one application to the next, even though there might be a single sign-on session in place. It's incumbent on any solution to really re-verify and continuously authenticate users who are accessing applications. And that really meets that verify everywhere, trust no one approach that is one of the core tenets of zero trust security.
Full agreement. What I would add is understand your risks. So understand where the biggest risks are, implement adequate measures, and try to find a very good balance of verify and do it continuously without and layered security without ending up with a zoo of different tools with too many of them. So you need some, but not too many. Danna, thank you very much for this talk. We already spent our time on that. Hopefully this is as interesting and relevant to everyone else listening to this podcast as it is to us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. Thanks for having me. Great discussion.